Blog Talk Radio.
You are now tuned in to Talks with Sheba, with your host, Dr. Sheba Holly. We invite, excite, educate, and empower. Let's talk.
Welcome to Talks with Sheba, the place where real people give real answers on issues plaguing our community today. I'm your host, Dr. Sheba Holly. Thanks for stopping in tonight. We aim to invite, excite, educate, and empower. So let's talk. Let's talk about depression and suicide. Depression can be masked with a smile, laughter, or gregarious posture, but nevertheless, it remains to be depression. Depression is the hurt in the depths of one's loins that manifests in a plethora of ways. Do you know it? Have you seen it? Sandra Campbell speaks of her encounter with depression and suicide.
My daughter Maggie was absolutely precious. She was beautiful. She was just vibrant and healthy and outgoing and funny. Very smart student, very good grades, and we were just so proud of her. She was also real funny and comical. She made everybody laugh, and if somebody was feeling down, she would just say a joke or just be herself, and it just made people laugh. So she had that funny side to her that people just loved, and I know I laughed all the time with her. She was just she didn't wake up for school that morning. She always got up about 6 o'clock, 5:55, and she would come and get in bed with me. And that morning, my alarm clock went off, and she didn't come and get in bed with me. And I thought, well, that's weird. And so I get up and I go down the hall, and her door was locked. My husband Andy was out of town on business in Atlanta, so it was just me and my son Marshall. He was across the hall in his room, and her door was locked. And I was like, Marshall, help me get this door open. I can't get this door open. And he actually used his school ID, and he slid it down, and he was able to jimmy her door open. And we found Maggie together, Marshall and I, that morning. She apparently had taken her life late the night before. So I can just tell you that it's the worst pain you could ever imagine, and then multiply that by 1,000, because it's just terrible, terrible pain. I had no idea that my daughter was suicidal. I'll tell you that now. Absolutely no idea. No idea that.
You're probably asking yourself, how is it a mother did not recognize the signs? As you may know, there are stigmas attached to the state of depression because individuals who are depressed are perceived as being weak. And no one wants to be seen as weak. Therefore, it is a taboo subject. So here's a few facts about depression. First of all, suicide is a potentially preventable public health problem. I just want to get that out there. And depression is one of the leading causes of suicide. Statistics state suicide was the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S., where there were 37,000 suicides and 1 million people attempted suicide, according to the Centers for Disease Control. Men take their lives nearly 4 times the rate of women, accounting for 79% of the suicides in the United States. We're not talking about the rest of the world. We're just talking about here. Risk factors for suicide vary by age, gender, and ethnic group. Over 90% of people who die by suicide have clinical depression or another diagnosable mental disorder or a history of alcohol or substance abuse. Now, there are some risk factors here. The risk factors are, well, usually someone encounters an adverse or traumatic life event in combination with these other risk factors. They may have prior suicide attempts, a family history of mental disorders or substance abuse, family violence, physical or sexual abuse. Maybe they keep firearms in the home. Chronic illnesses will cause someone to want to commit suicide. Incarceration or exposure to suicidal behavior of others. That's right, I said exposure. What are the warning signs? Well, here's just a few. Someone always talking about death or thinking about it. Clinical depression, deep sadness, loss of interest of things that you really like to do, trouble sleeping or eating, and it just gets progressively worse. Having a death wish, putting things in order, calling yourself tying up loose ends, and visiting or calling people to say goodbye. Be concerned if a person is exhibiting any of these warning signs and has attempted suicide in the past, because according to the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, between 20% and 50% of people who commit suicide have had previous attempts. This is not a game. Be vigilant. Next up, our guest reveals the life he saved.
Are you or someone you know suffering from stress, anxiety, or depression? Have you experienced feelings of frustration due to lack of family and or career support? Let's talk. Relationship issues got you down? Get the help you need. Contact Dr. Sheba Holly, mental health advisor and life coach at clarity.fm/Dr. Sheba Holly. That's DrShebaHolly. If confidentiality, comfort, and convenience is important to you, guidance is provided on your terms. You deserve peace of mind. Contact Dr. Sheba Holly, mental health advisor and life coach at clarity.fm/Dr. Sheba Holly. That's DrShebaHolly. Get answers now. Make your appointment today. Let's talk. Clarity.fm/Dr. Sheba Holly. That's DrShebaHolly.
And we're back. Tonight, I'm elated to bring S.L. Young, also known as Sly Young, author, blogger for the Huffington Post, professor, inspirational speaker, and founder of the educational nonprofit Saving Our Communities at Risk Through Educational Services, Socrates. I love it. Welcome to Talks with Sheba, Sly. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Dr. Holly.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for coming. It looks like you have your hands quite full these days.
Yeah, I'm rather busy. A lot of things got me really, really busy. I'm really motivated to give back and inspire.
Fantastic. So you have you have publications going crazy. You're on a writing rampage. It's a crazy world. Learn from it, parts 1 through 4. Choosing to take a stand, change me, my life and my destiny, above expectations, ethical opportunities, cost. I mean, you definitely give new meaning to pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. So tell us about your journey. Who is S.L. Young?
Well, I always like to say that I was just a kid who had a dream. Things weren't always easy for me. I experienced some challenges early in my life related to educational challenges. In 10th grade, I failed 6 out of 7 classes. I didn't do well. It took me a number of years before I could figure things out. I barely graduated from high school in the bottom 8% of my class, went to 2 colleges before I could figure things out. And once I did and I was able to connect with that process of learning, it just sort of, continued to grow from there. I wanted to do more. And eventually it led me to the classroom in addition to having my professional successes.
Fantastic. So the whole depression and suicide platform, how did you come to this?
Well, because it was a personal battle for me. Earlier this year in March, I was moments from committing suicide. I wasn't thinking about it that day. I actually woke up that morning and there was something different. The room was very heavy. I wasn't connecting to anything around me. there seemed to be just this dark cloud in the room, and I just didn't have the motivation to get up. And then all of a sudden, I just became very emotional, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And, you know, I wasn't expecting to feel that way that day. It just appeared. It wasn't even something that I was thinking about. And fortunately for me, I care for my mom, so I called one of my brothers, and I said to him, hey, I just want to make sure that if something happens to me that you'll take care of our mom. And I tried to keep it together, but I couldn't, and I broke down, and he asked me what was going on, and I was getting uncontrollable, just sobbing, and I just hung up the phone, and he kept calling back until I finally called him back for a moment. And at that moment, he told me, just use my own books to save my life. And at that moment, there was just something in his words, because he went on to tell me that, this is just a moment that you're going through. You just got to get through this moment, and it'll be okay. And he also directed me to contact my sister, and I called my sister as well and had a conversation. But the biggest things for me was the things that saved my life was my mom, having something important to do that afternoon because I teach at a local jail. Mm-hmm. But also, most importantly, had I not reached out because of my mom to my brother, I'm almost certain that I wouldn't be here today.
That's interesting. It says that there's this moment that it comes upon someone. And had you ever felt this way before?
Not. I mean, I'd had moments that I felt down. I think we all go through those moments. But this was something I had never felt before. And it was weird because as I was in that fog, as I like to describe it, mm-hmm. I feel like the devil was in the room with me because as I was sitting there in bed, unable to focus, concentrate, get up, or anything else, I kept hearing in my head, do it, do it, do it. And fortunately, I didn't do it. And thank God that, I have a loving family that cared enough to keep calling back.
So, I mean, do you know anyone, have you ever known anyone that experienced a deep depression or have committed suicide?
I don't know anybody who's who's committed suicide, but I do know folks who have experienced deep depression. I think a lot of folks experience it. They may not willingly admit it because there's mm-hmm. a stigma associated with saying that you're not feeling well. Because if we have an ache in our body, we say, okay, I've got a pain in my body, my back's hurting, my shoulder's hurting or whatever. But to tell someone that something's going on in your brain, then all of a sudden there's this perception of weakness, and that's one of the things that we have to get away from. If somebody has something that's going on in their body, doesn't matter if it's an arm, a leg, a side, or in the brain, we've got to treat it the same way, and there shouldn't be any stigmas associated with disclosing that you're in distress.
Yeah, wow. So I just heard you say you do work inside the prison system.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, in 2013, I started going into a local jail. I teach inmates about business life and soft skills. And the group that of men that I dealt with this last time, a lot of them had substance abuse issues of their own, so it was a great population to work with. And we just went through a process of learning about business, soft skills, communication, negotiation, time management, and then life skills using my It's a Crazy World, Learn From It series.
Oh, wow, It's a Crazy World. How crazy is it, Si?
It can be very crazy at times, but we've got to manage those moments in between, right?
We have to. So what do you talk about in these books?
So when we're going through the books in the jail, we basically go through each quote, and I read the quote, and then we have a discussion about it. If folks feel motivated to share a little bit more, we don't cut anyone off, and sometimes we do have some heated discussions about what the quote means, because the nice thing about the quotes that are in the book is that anyone who reads it can get a different perspective, because my quotes aren't to tell you what to think, but it's to give you things to think about, and you can apply it or use it in your own way.
Mm-hmm. Have you encountered anyone you've known in the prison system that have had the same issues that you needed to address while there?
not necessarily that were there specific to the issues that I was having, but again, there were some folks that had substance abuse issues, other life challenges that led them into the jail system. So what we're doing in the work in the jail is being able to help these gentlemen to look at life from a different perspective and look at the opportunities in front of them instead of the challenges that are behind them, and giving them some additional skills and opportunities to move forward in a positive way.
And positivity is the key. So what are your thoughts about, there are so many, and I call it the college students that are dying to be heard. What do you think's going on there? They're committing suicide on campus.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it relates to the issue of the stigma and not feeling that like there's anybody else that's there, right? So we've got to know that there's always somebody there that's available to help, whether it's a family, it's a friend, a counselor. There's a lot of different individuals that are out there that can help. And also there's the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at suicidepreventionlifeline.org, and the phone number for that is 800-273-8255, and they're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. For anybody who might not have anybody else that they can talk to or want to talk to, they're there to support.
That's good information. That's good information for anyone who's listening, whether it's for themselves or someone else. You're an avid blogger, and I have to admit, I do research on my guests, and I have to say your topics resonated with me on levels unimaginable. I felt like you were in the crevices of my mind. So where's that coming from?
Well, you know what? I like to say it's from the power of God. God has me on this journey, but I think a lot of it has derived from my life challenges. And someone said something to me recently. I was doing a guest lecture at George Mason University, and the professor there, Beth Jannery, said to me, the thing that you write about is humanity. She said that you're an observer of life. So through my writing, I try to write about things that are personal to me, that can help others and inspire others, but I also write about things that we're not necessarily willing to talk about, because we have a lot of things that exist in this world that we need to have some candid discussions about, whether it's race, depression, suicide, workplace bullying, ethical issues. We need to start having real and honest conversations about these things so that we can resolve them.
It's funny. I had a conversation recently. My grandmother had passed suddenly, and I found myself wanting to give up. And this is unheard of. I'm thinking, I have all this training. I've had clients that have had depression. There was a point where I felt like, as a professional, I didn't want to breathe. And then I started thinking about, and I'm going back to what you said, your brother was telling you, go back to your books, and I had to tell myself, go back to my training, because the vision I had of the outcome of me not coming out of this feeling was frightening. So if there's no training for someone, or if they don't have access to your books, what can someone do for a quick fix? No phone. What words would you want them, a mantra of some sort, should they reach for in that hour?
It starts with understanding that it's a moment and that it does get better, and to get up, get moving, and start working on your future again, because anything that's happened in the past is in the past. There's nothing that you can do to change it. We can't necessarily influence, we can influence the future by the things that we do today, but the only thing that we can control at this moment is the present. So trying to maintain a positive state of mind in this particular moment that's the key to continue to move forward, and that's what I've used.
Okay, talk to the idea of belief being an underutilized tool.
Well, a lot of folks have asked me over the years is, how do you continue to get up when you've had all of these challenges? And my quick answer is normally, I just decided to do it. And unfortunately, that doesn't necessarily help a lot of folks. So as I started to think about it a little bit more, it all has to do with belief. Belief in myself that I can do it, belief in the possibilities that there's something better ahead, belief that I am capable of things that I never even considered. And one of the things that I always like to say is, if you don't believe in yourself or believe in your causes, then it's very difficult for anybody else to believe in you either. So it starts with belief in yourself, and what I like to do is to develop a self-talk. I have, some folks might think this is a little crazy, but, I use self-talks all the time. And, I don't look in the mirror as much as I used to, but when I first started doing self-talks, the first one that I ever did, because I used to be a really shy kid, and in order to get over that shyness, because I knew that I needed to present in these Fortune 500 companies that I was working in, I would stand in front of the mirror. Well, first I had to develop my self-talk, right? So I created a self-talk that said, I'm a clear, concise, confident communicator. So that was my self-talk. And what I did 3 times a day, I would stand in front of the mirror, look myself in the eye, and have a conversation with myself. And I would say, looking in the mirror, I'm a clear, concise, confident communicator. I'm a clear, concise, confident communicator. I'm a clear, concise, confident communicator. And I would just say that over and over again. But to go back to one of your questions that you asked earlier is sort of how did I get on this journey? Well, this journey started long before I ever realized it. And it started actually in November of 2011. And I don't know why I did this, but I wrote a self-talk. And the self-talk that I wrote at that point was, you're wasting time doing stupid things and not being the man that you're meant to be. So I started on this journey long before I ever realized it.
That was stupid talk. That was strong. I mean, who wants to admit that they're not intelligent in their self-talk? Interesting. I just, you just bring so much to this platform. Inspirational speaking, where do you do your inspirational speaking?
Anywhere that they'll have me, because my goal is to help as many folks as I can. My mission is to deliver my message, and if I can just help one person, and I know that I've helped at least one, then it makes my life more complete. So I go out to the jails, I go into at-risk schools, I've done speaking events at the library, I've done it on college campuses. So I will speak wherever folks are willing to have me, because I have a message, and if I can help somebody else by sharing my story, then that's what I want to do. And I just want to add one other point real quick, and that's a point relative to vulnerability. A lot of times when we think about vulnerability, we think of it being a weakness. And vulnerability is not necessarily a weakness as we normally consider it. I actually don't consider it a weakness at all. I think vulnerability is a strength, because you have a strength to share your story with someone else who could benefit from it as well. And I know as I was making the decision whether I wanted to publicly disclose my battles with the depression and near suicide, some of the folks that came back to me said, hey, I'm really happy that you're able to share your story, because that took a lot for you to be able to do it. So we've got to think about vulnerability and sharing our challenges as a strength and not a weakness, because you can help somebody else, and you never know who's listening and how many folks you can help by sharing your story.
And that just reinforces that what we believe we experience in isolation is actually happening to others, and no one's talking about it.
Definitely.
We're on live with Sly Young, author of Choosing to Take a Stand, Changed Me, My Life, and My Destiny. And it's a crazy world. We'll be back in a moment.
For 75 years, the National Capital Optimist Club has been making a difference in the community by supporting youth charities. The Optimist Club aids and encourages youth development, believing that giving of oneself in service to others will advance the well-being of humankind, community life, and the world. The National Capital Chapter of the Optimist Club awards over $40,000 to charities each year. In addition, the club hosts golf tournaments, essay contests, and provides scholarships. The National Capital Optimist Club is looking for your support. Our primary fundraiser is the sale of Christmas trees. Visit one of our tree lots this holiday season located at Kensington Baptist Church and the Chevy Chase Supermarket. The club is also looking for new members. You'll have the opportunity to give back to your community and support the causes most important to you. For more information or to join, please contact NC Optimist Club at AOL.com or visit www.capitaloptimist.org. Make a difference for the youth in your community. Get involved with the National Capital Optimist Club.
You're tuned in to Talks with Sheba, where we are all about healing. Sly, how do you function while depressed? Obviously, you've been able to do it. You're doing so much. So how do you manage that?
It really just has to do with willpower to continue to move forward. One of the worst things that could happen for me or that I could experience is if I'm not doing anything. And, there's an old expression, idle hands are the devil's workshop. So I just try to stay busy and working on positive things. And that helps me, if I have those moments where I'm feeling a little down, it helps me to sort of move away from that. But I continue to remind myself that I have a purpose, I have value, and I'm making a difference. Okay.
Well, I guess that's functioning, huh? But if someone doesn't know their value, where do they get this? Where do they muster this from?
Well, it all begins with just taking a step. You've got to explore a lot of different options to find out what works for you. So when I first started experiencing depression, and it actually started probably a little bit over 2 years ago, almost 2.5 years ago, I noticed that something was different. I didn't know what, because I had never experienced depression in that way, so I didn't know what it was. And so I said, I don't know what's going on, but I need to do something. So I started to write, and that was my outlet to resolve my issues. So whether somebody needs to write or to go to church or to join a community group or to exercise, there's a lot of different outlets that can help individuals to move past those moments of doubt or concern or whatever might be going on. Because, again, as we've talked about throughout the show, is we've got to manage those moments and continue to move forward.
And this is true. How, and this is all on your blog. I suggest that everyone goes to your website. Please give that information before we get off the air, how to get your books, how they can connect with you and see what you're talking about when you're blogging, because, like I said, it resonated with me. Someone else, it seems like your brother was really connected and he knew some signs. He knew how to help you and what to say. Where can that knowledge, an outside person, glean that type of knowledge?
Well, I think it all starts with compassion. If we pay attention and we look at others who might be having some issues, so typically someone who is depressed might have some changes in behavior that someone might notice something, but sometimes we'll say, oh, well, that's nothing. But it could be the beginning of something. So when someone's having some challenges, it could be that they're withdrawing for whatever reason. It could be that they're having sleep pattern changes. They might be having some challenges with substance abuse, or it could be related to excessive activities, whether it's drinking, having sex, compulsive cleaning, overworking. There's a lot of different things that can be manifested by someone's depression.
Okay. And talking, if you're not a talker, oh my goodness. Have you ever had someone continue to ask you questions and you wasn't sure where they were coming from with those questions, and you just felt like it was a nagging feeling, like what are they getting at? What are they getting at? Because Sandra Campbell, when she talks about her daughter Maggie, she said, just ask your children questions. You can ask someone questions all day long. That doesn't mean you're going to get a true answer, because when we are thinking, we don't always say what we think. We can just switch up in a moment and just camouflage our true reality in front of others.
Yeah,
so that's another thing. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I think if we want to help someone who might be depressed, there's a few things that I like to provide to folks. The first is don't make assumptions. Don't make assumptions about what might be happening with that individual. The next thing that I tell folks to do is to offer assistance. So ask is there anything that you can do, or is there anything that this individual might want to discuss? Then don't be judgmental. And that's a real important one, because if someone is in a process of starting to disclose something that might be going on to them, they don't want to feel judged or evaluated, because what you're trying to do at that moment is to really establish that moment of trust. And you might have a close relationship, but in that moment you've got to work harder to make sure that the individual is ready to disclose whatever they want to tell you in a non-judgmental way. They feel that they're not being evaluated. Also, allow disclosures on their own time. So you can't force someone to tell you something at that moment. And I know that might sound foreign, because you say, oh, there's something going on. I've got to ask them all these questions, because I got to get all the answers now so that I can help this individual. But that might not be the best thing to do, because by continuing to badger and ask a bunch of questions, what that might do is just push someone further and further away and not want to disclose anything. So allow individuals to disclose things on their own time. And then once they start to really open up, let them tell their story. You've got to let them tell their story their way, not the way that you want to hear it, but the way that they want to tell it. And then as you're going through this entire process, it's nothing but unconditional support.
Okay. I have one of your most recent tweets on hand. You mind if I read it?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay. Don't devalue any positive struggles towards an endpoint, because completion and success feel the same no matter the way you started. Talk about it.
Yeah, because sometimes we discount someone's efforts, like you didn't do enough of this, or you weren't as good at this. And what I like to say is, if someone is working to do something in a positive way, who are we to discount their effort? Because it might take someone like myself. My educational journey is not the traditional path by any means, but it was my journey, and there still was a lot of value in the lessons that I learned. But even though my path took a lot longer to get there, doesn't mean that it's any different, because completion and success, no matter how long it takes to get there, it still feels the same once you arrive at that moment.
There you have it, 140 characters that say it all. Now we will take some calls from our audience. If you are willing or wanting to ask a question or make a comment, please press the number 1 on your keypad. 202-678. You're on the air live with Sly Young.
Good evening. I have a question for Sly. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. I'm enjoying listening to what you're saying, and I have a question. My question is, what if you are in a relationship with someone who suffers, with depression and abuse, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and it's been long going. And in their issue, at some point you felt like you were getting like vacuumed into that depression. And then you decided, you know, even though you are maintaining that relationship, but you do not want to take on that spirit of depression. Have you ever experienced that where you feel like even though, you know, you love this person, you care about them, but you feel like you have to survive and you don't want to feel guilty about wanting to survive? Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. And where I'll start with, in my first book, It's a Crazy World, Learn From It, Part 1, Taking Care of Me. You can't help anyone else unless you take care of yourself first. Because you've got to take care of yourself and make sure that you remain in a healthy state of mind before you can really fully help someone else. Doesn't mean that you can't help them, but you've got to take care of yourself first. So, for example, I mean, I've been taking care of my mom for about 15 years, and there's moments that I'm like, you know, I just don't want to do it. It doesn't mean I don't love her. It just means I just have that moment. 15 years is a long time out of your life. And what I realize is during those moments, I've got to step back, and I need to have an outlet and do something that's enjoyable to me. Because if I can't take care of me, if I fall apart, then how am I going to take care of my mom and you know, as she needs to be treated, you know, and taken care of?
And not to cut you off, and I was listening to you when you said that you just started going into your depression in 2011, and what came to mind was, from my experience, I feel that what happens is, what causes depression is, it's not necessarily your issue. It's because you're so concerned about the well-being of someone else that it just overtakes you, where you become into this dark, depressed state. Was that your experience?
Well, so let's take a step back for a moment, because one of the things that we haven't discussed on the show are some of the origins of someone's depression. So there's four things that I like to categorize under the category of depression, and the first being psychological. So that can be related to irregular brain activity. The other item is physiological. Someone could have a chemical imbalance. Or it could be situational. You have a specific event that triggers it. And for me, part of it was a specific event, but it also was coupled with some periodic issues where were related to certain time periods. Well, actually, let me take that back. So it was situational for me, a specific event that led to my feeling of depression, but then individuals can also have periodic depression where it could be triggered around specific times of the year, whether it's an anniversary of a divorce or someone's death or something else.
So it wasn't necessarily because you were taking care of your mom and she may have been in a depressed state where it just overtook you to the point of depression? It wasn't related to that?
Well, my mom isn't depressed, but for me, it was the perfect storm of life events. So it was career, relationship, the pressures of taking care of an elderly parent, and some other life challenges. It just all came together at the same time, and I think when we have those moments, sometimes we get bent. I didn't break, but I got bent, and I just needed to figure out a way to get out of that.
Well, I appreciate you sharing, and it was nice talking to you, and I don't want to take up any more of your time. So thank you so much.
Thank you for calling.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're going to take another caller, 301-204. You're on the air live with Sly Young. What's your question or comment?
Hi. I think this is amazing that you all are talking about this platform of depression. I see many kids, as you all were saying, nowadays are battling this. What would you suggest for those people listening with children of the elementary age, how little children can cope with depression or how we can recognize it?
Sure. Well, with elementary school children, it's also life events, traumatic events that are going on in the community, in their homes specifically. They're small people. They haven't had very many life experiences, and when there's something like sexual abuse, violence in the home, they can be depressed because they're not getting anything to eat. They have, malnutrition. There's just so many factors that could contribute to the fact that a child at such a young age is depressed. And the same techniques are used to help them pull out of it and manage their depression coping skills, so to speak. But that's what's going on. It's always an event that's going on in their home or some chemical imbalance. And that can be diagnosed by a doctor. A psychologist in a school could take a history, a family history of the child, and just do some diagnostics with them.
Okay, because I do have a friend. She has a daughter who's 5, and she herself is currently seeking therapy for depression and her bipolarism. And one thing that she did tell me that is her therapist was suggesting that her daughter also attend some sessions. I guess it's considered kiddie therapy. I'm not sure if that's the correct term or not.
Right. Pediatric.
But because sometimes her daughter has outbursts, like lashes out at her and calls her vulgar names, should I say, but I think it's, and I'm no doctor, it's just a reflection of what she sees her mother doing, and it becomes an acceptable behavior. What would you suggest I can do to help with this? Because I know I don't want to overstep my boundaries as a friend, but I kind of want to help. I'm not sure. What should I do? What do you all suggest?
Well, I would suggest using behavior management techniques. So you're just exhibiting or modeling the proper behavior, or having her think about the behavior that she's exhibiting, and talk about it. As far as, you don't want to sound like you're scolding someone else's child, because they'll take offense and they'll feel like they're not being a good parent, and then that'll be another issue.
Okay.
So you want to have a gentle talk and just kind of make it the culture of your presence. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It's just kind of embedded into your personality or how you interact when you're in their environment. And it's gentle, because you don't want, no one, even an adult, will not really take heed to what the message you're trying to send if it comes across the wrong way. So you have to also understand how to interact with the child and what works for them, because people want to be done the way they want to be done and not the way you want to do them. So, and that includes children. Sly, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you did a great job.
Okay. Do you have any more questions?
No, that was my biggest question.
Well, thank you for calling.
Very much. No
You're
problem.
so welcome. Oh, well, thank everyone for your questions and comments tonight. Remember, there had to have been a breakthrough out there for someone. Next up, a snippet of Who Does That? After a short commercial break.
The First Tee of Greater Washington, D.C. teaches young people ages 7 to 18 life skills and character education through the game of golf. Its research-proven programs are having a positive impact on participants, their families, and the community. Through the First Tee, participants learn to introduce themselves, manage emotions, solve conflicts, plan for the future, and appreciate diversity. To get involved, please visit thefirstteedc.org or call 202-479-2588. The First Tee, it's more than a game.
Who does that?
All right, guys, tonight I have a story about a woman who fakes being deaf to hold on to her boyfriend. I know the dating game can be a little hectic, but this takes the cake. Now listen to this. A waitress in Kodiak, Alaska by the name of Tina recounts the time she encountered a gorgeous guy and found herself, quote, unquote, frozen, not knowing what to do. I know we've all had, we felt this way before, whether it was male or female at some point, but check out what she does. She looks this guy in the face and says, "I'm deaf." Then he looks down at her, grabs her shoulder, and yells, "My name is Chris." Well, apparently, little Miss Tina continued this charade for quite some time because she describes having to pretend she couldn't hear dogs barking or cars honking while she's walking across the street. All of this to keep a man? Really, ladies? Is that what we're doing now? I'll pass. Anywho, that's it for tonight. Thanks for hanging out with us. We would like to thank our guest, Sly Young, for enlightening us. Please, I beg you to look for the signs of depression and suicide. You can save a life and live a life. If you have any questions or comments, email us at sheba@talkswithsheba.tv or call 866-671-4344. And remember, work like you don't need the money, love like you've never been hurt, and dance like nobody's looking. We'll talk later.
You are now tuned in to Talks with Sheba with your host, Dr. Sheba Holly. We invite, excite, educate, and empower. Let's talk. Talks with Sheba. Be empowered.